gave me that. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Great.
Nothing at all.
So how was your trip? It was fabulous. Was it? Yeah. What was your favorite part? I don't know. There were so many favorite parts, but I loved Paris. We had a great time in Paris. Where'd you stay? We stayed. Oh, thank you. The board. We stayed on the left bank. In quite a small hotel that a friend had recommended. That was fabulous. I think they only have like 9 rooms in it.
What street?
I can't remember the street, but it was on a little alley. It's about 2 blocks from where you cross the bridge to go to Notre Dame. Right in that neighborhood right there. Yeah. Yeah, great fun. Lots of good food. Oh, good. Good restaurants. We did.
People complain about answering. You used up your one call.
Our hotel was pretty good about, sort of recommending places and giving us a little map.
Something.
Yeah. And Italy was wonderful as always. Yeah. We stay in this small town, Porcino, in the Tuscany area, in a castle.
I don't know if they know how to work this stuff or if they just do the TV.
It's just delightful.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And there are no tourists in this town. You sort of walk down to the end of the street and have a drink in a coffee little bar. And no one speaks any English. And I mean, the same people are there
Can't just go
having the
back to
same
whatever you
drink.
did before.
That's working. Test, test, test. I don't know if they can hear that.
I don't think so. Is it? Now it is. Now it is.
That-
Now
that's-
we got crickets.
You hear it again?
There comes the buzz again.
I think you're going to have crickets to make it
I think
work.
so.
I hope they can't hear it at home.
Hello. It's low, but
We really enjoyed having a car and driving around and being on our own. And
I meant to tell you, if you get any, we'll just have to apologize. We got home last time, and it's evidently a fixed
Yeah.
now, because they now have the
Yeah.
cameras. When you pay it, make sure you get the receipt. I didn't the first time, and I had to pay it again.
oh.
I paid it twice.
So how long did
one
it
time
take
we
you
had a lot
to
of
get them?
interference from somebody that had a cell phone. You don't have a cell phone you're talking to, did you?
And
Yeah.
another year. I mean, I left mine on because I was waiting for Larry to call. And I'd already thrown everything away because I figured it was okay. Never throw it away no matter what. I have it on my computer. Larry must have been calling me, and I kept mine on vibrate. You got him, though, right?
You didn't pick up the second time.
That's what we do. We go to the airport outside of,
Yeah.
like, we dropped it off at the airport in Milan. We picked it up at the airport in Rome. We never drove in a city.
Of course, they get flights together.
And because they have no park, no drive zones.
Right.
But how are you supposed to know it? They can't even tell.
All right. Crickets are under control. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Capitola Planning Commission meeting, Thursday, May 7th. This meeting is being cablecast live on Charter Communications, Cable TV Channel 8, and is being recorded to be replayed on Monday and Friday next week at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed from the city's website at www.cityofcapitola.org. Our technician tonight is Peter. And as a reminder, please turn off your cell phones during the meeting. If you do come up to speak, please sign your name on the sheet at the podium so that we can spell it correctly in the record. And if you would join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The oral communications section.
Roll call.
I'm sorry?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call, please.
Commissioner Welch.
Here.
Commissioner Westman.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Here.
Commissioner Newman. Here. And Chairperson Smith.
Here. And I like to speed through things, so please don't hesitate to let me know when I skip something. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. We did pass out some additional materials related to item 4C on tonight's agenda. And then additionally, we have added an item to your agenda to appoint a member of the Planning Commission to the city's Traffic and Parking Commission.
Okay, would you like to do that early in the agenda, the appointment?
I would defer to the chair. It's fine with me if we do it now or if we wait till later.
Why don't we do it now? So we need an appointment because Ron was our appointee.
Correct.
Anybody want the job?
Well, Nels is on the Traffic and Parking Commission, so I think it probably should be someone else.
Oh,
You don't want to have the two of us there.
What night do they
We
meet?
might have to draw straws on this Wednesday.
Wednesday evenings, I think it's the second Wednesday of the month, 6:30.
They only meet like every other month. I
Yeah.
don't think they even meet monthly.
And even then, I think a lot of their meetings are canceled.
I think of the group, I haven't been on one of those commissions yet, so our appointments. I see I'm looking at all these faces been around for a long time, so
These are the voices,
I probably
the faces
should.
of experience.
exactly. They're all looking at me, so
so TJ will be our appointee.
I
We owe you.
guess
Thank you, TJ.
my wife's not in the audience, so it'll be all right.
There is one meeting that is agendized for next week, next Wednesday.
Oh, I'm out of town, but
Right away. Right in there.
thanks. Thank you.
Jump in early. Thank you, TJ. This section is for public comments. Short communications from the public concerning matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak on an item that is not on our agenda tonight? Please approach the podium and state your name and use the microphone so they can hear you at home.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Richard Lippy. I live at 620 Monterey Avenue in Capitola. I have the dubious distinction of being the closest neighbor to the proposed skate park at Monterey Park. My sleeping quarters are less than 50 feet away from the proposed skate park. And I've spoken before, but there are so many issues to speak on regarding the proposed skate park that I'm taking every opportunity to share the information that I'm finding in my research. So tonight, I'm again speaking about the proposed 6,000 square foot skate park at Monterey Park, a project that I believe the Commission will be handling in the next few weeks or few months.
Me, Richard, if I can interrupt just really quickly, can we have a 3-minute timer, please?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot to start that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, two's close enough. Okay.
I'll get you another
That's all
minute.
right.
We'll let you talk for 3.
That's fine. Now I lost my train of thought. Oh, this is a highly contentious project, the way it's been presented to the neighbors bordering Monterey Park, and I think contentious is a good word because it is defined as controversial, disputable, and debatable. All of those qualities are in this project as far as I'm concerned. I have a letter that I have submitted tonight for your reference, and there's 13 points that I would like to bring up, but I'm only going to read a few of them, 13 points on the letter. Number 6 is, in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, it appears that the proposed skate park at Monterey Park will be an all-age skate park, operating under standard park hours of sunrise to sunset. This will significantly increase the unhealthy levels of noise in this residential neighborhood park area. Number 7, noise levels of the skate park will certainly be one of the main concerns of operation, as is pointed out on the website of Skate Park Association International. Noise is their top-rated subject and most frequent query from the general public. Capitola currently has a 9,500 square foot skate park being built at McGregor Park. Just this one skate park distinguishes Capitola as having the highest ratio of skate parks to city population, at a ratio of 1 for 10,000. Scotts Valley is 1 for 12,000. Santa Cruz is 1 for 21,000 people. Watsonville is 1 for 52,000 people. And San Jose is 1 for 77,000 people. According to the Capitola Skate Park Park Code 12.54, children under the age of 10 must be accompanied by a parent or a legal guardian. From my research, it appears that the city will be liable for accidents or injuries where the person skateboarding is under 12 years old, according to the California Health and Safety Code, Section 115800, as discussed on page 59 of the City Council packet
30
material
seconds.
2011. The city should be risk-averse. This 2-year differential between the 10 and the 12 should be revisited, in my opinion. Currently, there are no permanent structures at Monterey Park, except for the drinking fountain. The proposed skate park would be a massive, permanent structure that would preclude any other activities in that area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is Helen Bryce. I'd like to talk about open spaces and parks in Capitola, which I feel are essential to the quality of life, the preservation of the environment, and the economic viability of our city. Currently, the City of Capitola does not have a cohesive plan for the management and growth of our green spaces and parks. For example, I very strongly feel the proposed skateboard park in Monterey Park is not an appropriate use of that park. It's a poor fit for the neighborhood. It takes away green space, which we must preserve as Capitola grows, and it will worsen traffic and parking problems in the area of the school. There is a skate park being built at McGregor. Mayor Norton was recently interviewed by the Capitola Village Residents Association, and he said he'd like a skate park in the area behind what is now City Hall. This is, to say the least, confusing to Capitola residents. So let's take a look at what is the best use of our green space in Capitola. With this in mind, I add my voice to that of Elizabeth Russell, former member of the City Commission on the Environment, in asking the City of Capitola to create a Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan process that would create sustainable parks, recreation facilities, and services. I realize the Climate Action Plan has not yet been released to the public, so at this time I would just like to say, so far, great job. I read with great interest the section on parks and open spaces in the draft Climate Action Plan. I realize the CAP focuses on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and it does mention some of the benefits of parks and open spaces in that regard. I would very much like to see the CAP delve more deeply in the area of how parks and open spaces improve our physical environment, including air quality, water, and natural habitat. Additionally, I believe our Climate Action Plan should recognize the important interplay between environmental factors and quality of life in Capitola. Consideration of our open spaces and parks should be part of every plan for growth in Capitola.
30
Thanks for
seconds.
listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening on an item not on our agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to commission comments. Are there any commissioner comments tonight?
I just have one. Our last meeting, I think it was last meeting, we approved the signs for Margaritaville, and they had their grand opening, kind of a soft opening tonight, and it's had an opportunity to go there for dinner. Great food, and it's going to be a nice addition to the village, I think. So
So does that mean it'll be open starting tomorrow night?
she was open tonight, so I assume she's going to be open tomorrow night as well.
Great.
Good.
Good news. Staff comments. Okay, we move to approval of the minutes from the April 2nd Planning Commission meeting. Are there any changes?
Move approval?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
I'll abstain since
Okay, so one abstention. We now move to what we call the consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered by the Planning Commission to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There won't be any separate discussion on any of the items prior to the commissioner vote unless someone from the public or someone from the commission would like to pull an item for discussion. If it's pulled for discussion, we will hear them in the same order that they're on the agenda, and it'll start with a staff report and follow the normal process. Tonight we have 3 items on consent calendar. 4525 Capitola Road, which is a conditional use permit for a Sunday school to be located in the commercial residential zoning district. 208 Hollister, a design permit for the demolition of an existing single-story residence and construction of a new 2-story residence located in the R1 single-family residential zone. And finally, 110 Stockton Avenue, which is a conditional use permit for a takeout restaurant and bakery to be located in the Central Village zoning district. Are there any members of the public that would like to pull any of those 3 items for discussion and presentation? Seeing none, is there anyone on the commission that would like to pull an item for discussion and presentation?
I do not want to pull, and I don't have a problem with them, but I need to recuse myself from 4A and 4B, so I'd ask that we do it in 2 separate votes.
And I would like to pull item C just to talk a little bit about hours of operation.
And I had a question which may lead to pulling and may not. This has to do with, we have 2 use permits. One of them is going to be on the regular agenda now, but so this will apply to both. But I had 2 thoughts about use permits. One was that, would it make any sense, and this is a question for staff, to include a condition? Well, first I thought the condition should be that they comply with, they not have sidewalk signs except in compliance with the ordinance. Then I thought, well, maybe it could be broader than that they comply with all sign ordinances. The reason for making that a use permit condition is that we really don't have the enforcement teeth for our sign ordinance seems to be weak, and it's been weak for all the years that I've been involved in this. And if it were a use permit condition, it gives the staff more leverage with with someone who has a use permit and is violating the sign ordinance, because then they not only get letters about putting their signs out, and then the next day they put them back where they were in the first place, but they risk their use permit. So, I mean, what do you think of that idea?
Commissioner Newman, we can certainly add conditions like that as a practice. I think I generally discourage adding conditions which are requirements of the municipal code. I don't think it adds really any enforcement ability necessarily. Municipal code doesn't allow those types of signs, so we could require them to be removed or fine somebody should the city choose to do so under current conditions. Nonetheless, if there's a desire to do that to make it more apparent to the applicant, it's something we can easily do. It doesn't hurt anything.
So in other words, if they are not in compliance with our sign ordinances and it's in a condition, we could not review their conditional uses?
I think in order to review a conditional use permit, there needs to be some history of, ongoing non-compliance, overall. I don't know that we would take that step for somebody that was putting on an illegal sign or not.
Okay.
If it was egregious enough, I imagine we could.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So my other comment goes to what you just said, which is we have a standard condition on use permits that says that if they're not complied with, they will be reviewed, which seems to me to be weak. And I pulled out the ordinance with regard to violations of use permits, and what it says is, in any case where the conditions to the granting of a permit have not been or are not complied with, the Community Development Director shall give notice thereof to the permittee, which notice shall specify a reasonable period of time within which to perform said conditions and correct said violation. If the permittee fails to comply with said conditions or to correct said violation within the time allowed, notice shall be given to the permittee of intention to revoke such permit at a hearing to be held not less than 30 calendar days after the date of such notice. Following such hearing, and if good cause exists, therefore the Planning Commission may revoke the permit. So that's a pretty strong ordinance, and the condition seems really kind of like a wishy-washy. If I were an applicant, I would say, oh, well, we'll just go back before them again and they'll review it, and I don't know what that means. So I think it should say something like, if the condition is not complied with, the Planning Commission may revoke the permit.
We can certainly revise the permit condition language.
So it puts the holder of a use permit on notice that there is a real remedy out there.
What we can do is, following the meeting, we can draft up some revised condition language and share it with the Commission at the next meeting, see if it's to your liking, and change it on the fly and start using it in the future.
That's a good comment.
So then you wouldn't pull either item to have a condition revised on tonight's items?
Well, I'm willing to wait. The one that's on the agenda on the consent calendar is the church, Capitola Road, so it's probably not as important an issue for that. So
Okay.
wait for next meeting on that. But maybe on the one that's coming up on the regular agenda, we can talk about it.
Okay. I, as well, would not like to pull an item, but I would like to add a condition if the commissioners are okay with that. And it's at 208 Hollister. Staff reached out to the applicant and verified that the fire pit that is in the plan is in fact a gas fire pit and not a wood-burning fire pit. I'd like to add that as a condition, and I'm fine with leaving it on consent with that addition.
And I had actually talked to the staff this afternoon about 208 Hollister and discussed with them adding a condition that there not be any second floor decks. And I know it's not, a deck is not clearly shown on the plan, but there's an area where there's a possibility in my mind that someone could ultimately put one. So I would just like to go ahead and add that condition in there as well.
Any issues from the commissioners on leaving it on consent? If we want to pull it for discussion, then TJ will have to leave the room, and that's...
Well, the only thing, I mean, I'm a little concerned about adding a condition like that without, and it's on the consent agenda, but the applicant doesn't have a chance to, unless they've already been
I believe staff's already talked to them about that.
Yeah, I spoke with the applicant. Derek's actually here if we have any questions for him regarding that.
That's not a problem for the applicant.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Then it sounds like I can move the remainder of the consent calendar?
which would be items A and B for the consent calendar? Yep. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we know TJ is abstaining, but all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one's opposed. Thank you. So we
If I
will
may
move
clarify,
on.
you recused yourself from those,
Yes,
correct?
I did.
Yes.
We will move on to 110 Stockton Avenue. Staff report, please.
Okay. Thank you. Before you this evening is an application at 110 Stockton Avenue. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow a bakery takeout restaurant within the existing commercial building at 110 Stockton Avenue in the Central Village. On the slide is the original floor plan that came in for 110 Stockton Avenue. As you can see, the bathroom was originally located within the kitchen area. The applicant brought forth changes to the interior layout, which you have before you this evening, creating direct access to the bathroom for visitors to the future bakery. The management plan included the hours of operation of 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. They're required to have 6 seats within the bakery to comply with the coastal requirements of not intensifying the use within the village. And the bakery is planned to be a to-go establishment with off-site consumption of goods being their primary sales. Thank you. So staff is recommending approval for the conditional use permit at 15 for application 15-063. Thank you.
So I pulled this, because I'm in favor of the application. I think uses like this in the village are good. I think we have not enough of them, and so I'm very much in favor of it. I think that I would like to see in the conditions the hours of operation. I believe when we've had other restaurants that are below residence, I know that we had an application several years ago that never got completed, never got built, and it was for a grocery store either in that building or the one next door, and I believe we had hours of operation for that. We've done it in the past, although I know staff wasn't able to find specific examples of it. I'm certain that we have done it, and I think for the folks that live upstairs, it's good for them to know what hours they can expect noise and what hours they don't need to expect noise. I believe that their 6 o'clock hour might be a little bit restrictive for them. That might be good in the winter or in some weekday, but there might be weekends, gorgeous weekends, twilight concert nights, festival nights, where they might want to open later, and maybe we would want to extend their open hours to 8 p.m. They might want to close at 6 most of the time, but they have the ability to stay open until 8. So I'd like to see that. And then from my experience owning a bakery for the last 38 years in Capitola with neighbors that are very close to me, in fact, we're having a difficulty right now, and we're going to resolve it. We always do resolve them, and I'm sure you will too. Could the applicant just raise their hand? I just want to know who I'm directing my welcome to Capitola to. It's a good idea for the applicant to understand and it be in the condition when deliveries can be made, how deliveries can be made. Baking can be very noisy, and baking happens quite early in the morning, so maybe something in the conditions about that, and I'm not quite sure how we can do it. I don't want to restrict their operation in any way, but we do want to make it so that everybody knows what to expect, and they know what the recourse is if that is violated. So I would suggest that we add hours of operation. We extend them to 8 if it's all right with the applicant, and maybe the applicant could talk a little bit about the experience that they've had with what kind of baking they're going to be doing, when their deliveries might be coming in, that kind of thing, so that we know, because there'll be big trucks. Our big trucks park in the middle of the street, sometimes come at 6 in the morning, but that's in a spot that's not loud, for anybody. So I think we need to forestall any future difficulties now. So maybe the applicant could give us a little information about.
Before we go to the applicant, what I'd like to do, and thanks for explaining the poll, but are there any questions for staff?
I have no questions for staff.
I have a question for Gail. Would you consider going as late as 9 o'clock? Because It seems like there are a number of the businesses in the village that stay open till 9 o'clock during the summertime, and 8 might even be a little early. And like you said, there's no requirement that he stay open that late. It just provides the opportunity for them to
And I wouldn't have a problem with that. I do think in the long run that we need to standardize these village hours of operation for different types of uses, because I think they're all over the board, and I think it would be really good if we standardize them possibly for different buildings or areas, depending on how close residents are or not, because I do think they're kind of all over the board at this point. But I wouldn't have a problem with 9.
And I just had one other comment since the item got pulled. I have real difficulty with the city's provision for takeout restaurants. because we have takeout restaurants, and it says you get your takeout restaurant if you have 6 seats or less. And unfortunately, I don't know of, the last 2 or 3 takeout restaurants that have come into the village have not abided by the 6-seat rule. They've ultimately added more and tried to become more of a restaurant. So I think the applicant, needs to be clear that it is 6 seats, that you can't have any more than that, and that the city's going to have to be willing to enforce that condition so that we are fair and apply our ordinances evenly.
And I think it's important to know why that's there. And my understanding is that is there because of the Coastal Commission and having to do with parking, right? It's not really so much our own wanting certain amounts of seating. It's because the Coastal Commission deems our parking, well, we used to be underparked, and that's why they limited numbers of tables in restaurants in the past. Is that still true?
Yeah, that's correct. That's my understanding. The genesis of that rule was that we do have a requirement in our zoning code through the LCP that you can't intensify any uses without providing parking. The 6-seat rule, though, is really to provide some of these small businesses with an opportunity to come in without providing parking. If you have 6 seats or less, we apply the same 1 parking space per 240 square feet like we do for retail. Once you go to that 7th seat, then you're 1 parking space per 60 square feet. So it's kind of a break for small businesses to come in so that they can open up without providing parking that's nearly impossible to provide.
Right. And the fire department would have some say about that as well, I know.
There's
I know they
occupancy,
do.
yeah.
They do.
So I have one question for staff. When we have a retail place that changes hands but continues to be a retail space, it doesn't come back to the Planning Commission unless they make some kind of modifications. In this case, if we do approve the conditional use for a takeout restaurant and the bakery, for whatever reason, decides to change from a bakery to a different kind of takeout restaurant, somebody wants to come in and start, barbecuing chicken or something like that, does it come back, or is that use permit, once it's issued for that location, standing?
I want to make absolute sure, but I believe in the CV that it does, that we have bakery as a separate use category. If it were simply under restaurant, it could, just as across the street there was a restaurant that changed hands, and it still is a restaurant with seating. So where this is, I could look it up in the code to make sure, but where this is bakery and restaurant to go, it would, if somebody came in with a taco stand, I think we would bring it back before this board because it's no longer that bakery as listed in the Central Village. But I can check the code really quick and make sure that that's...
I think it's just going to, it was going to impact, it'll make my questions of the applicant much simpler, knowing that answer. At this time, if the applicant would like to speak, we would welcome.
Good evening. My name is Helmut John Fritz, and I'm the applicant for the 110 Stockton Avenue. First of all, I thank you for pointing out the opening hours. When we submitted the plan, we didn't actually think about the summer events that are happening in Capitola. So I thank you for pointing that out. And the bakery and takeout restaurant is called Petit Four. That is something comes from the French, a small oven. And what we want to do, we want to bring a little bit style into Capitola. Instead of pizza takeout, it's going to be on the higher end side. It's going to be pastries and a small European inspired sandwiches. So it's not going to be the big cookies that were in that shop before. It's going to be a little bit more stylish. And I'm also the owner of the Davenport Roadhouse. which is up in Dam for the restaurant and inn, and we have a large kitchen there. So most of the cooking that we are using for the savory items will actually be done in the roadhouse and not in the bakery. And I may want to add, if we would be changing the use of the restaurant, we would also need to comply with health regulations. And if we would cook as a normal restaurant, would cook meat, etc., you'll need a different type of hood and different type of grease trap, etc., and that is currently not applicable for a bakery. So we are within that limit. I do understand that it's not easy for us to comply with 6 seats, and I understand that other restaurants, to-go restaurants, maybe try to extend this. We, as the Roadhouse, we have probably a unique situation. I have a pastry chef that works in the Roadhouse. He teaches at the French Culinary Institute, and for me it's an extension of his capabilities. So a lot of the pastries will also be done at the Roadhouse and delivered to 110 Stockton Avenue. We have a backside delivery, so we trucks or the van wouldn't stop actually in front of the bakery. There's a back entrance which is on the parking lot. So that wouldn't affect traffic or hinder traffic in any way.
So what kind of oven do you have in this facility?
We will have a single oven,
convection
oven, an electric convection oven, and that's the only oven that will be in the bakery. They will be used in the morning for croissants, etc. But most of the baking, as I said, will be done in a professional kitchen.
Great. And I thought I had... What is the other piece of machinery that you've got on the opposite wall of the oven? I can't read it in your plans.
So maybe you could point it out.
Well, if
you
look at the sink,
the sink... It's a sandwich prep table. So
that's on this wall, though.
That's on this wall,
You have something in this plan on the wall that you don't have anything on right now. There's that wall.
Oh, that is going to be used for shelving.
Okay. Okay, great.
There's no other piece of machinery or cooking equipment in that kitchen.
And do you plan on getting deliveries there?
Yes, we will get deliveries. That is unavoidable. But as I said, the preparation and the cooking will mostly be done up in Davenport, because we have, I think, 200 square feet of kitchen, which is not a lot to do professional cooking.
So it sounds like, and also you're not going to have a lot of room to have a lot of flour stored here or whatever, so the big trucks really aren't going to be coming here.
Yeah, no.
I don't think. Doesn't sound like from what you're saying that they are going to be coming here, so I don't think, thank you, okay.
But according to health code, we have got 1.3 sinks per customer.
Per seated customer?
Per seated customer, yeah. We have to have 10 sinks.
That is just ridiculous.
Yeah. So that takes a lot of the space, but that's the health code.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. So because we want to do those small sandwiches.
Yeah.
That means we have to comply with all that cooking restrictions or health restrictions, with a 3-compartment sink, with a 2-compartment sink, and hand wash sink.
And you still are going to need a grease trap?
No, we're not required, as far as I'm aware.
I'm pretty sure you're going to need a grease trap. I'm fairly sure that no matter what, even if, no matter what, like you're throwing cream down from the coffees and that kind of thing, I think they're going to.
Yeah, so at the moment it's not required, but who knows?
Yeah, they do surprise you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you very much. And bring it back to the commission.
So I would feel comfortable not worrying about deliveries, but hours of operation. Doesn't sound like any heavy baking's happening. I don't think there's going to be a lot of noises early in the morning. So I would just like to add a condition that indicates that their hours of operation would be from, let's see, what was the time? Or I forget the morning hour, whatever morning hour you stated, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m.
And can I have clarification on employees can come earlier than the hours of operation? Hours of operation are from the time that it's
Hours
open.
of operation,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
Do
you.
we want to make that 7 in the morning till 9 at night? Because it seems like, you know, they are going to be selling coffees and pastries. There are an awful lot of people who don't want to wait till 8 o'clock in the morning to...
Well, before we get to the specific numbers, I want to kind of take the other side of this. Yeah, because I'm not really convinced yet that this is a good idea to introduce this into the village, and since you brought it up, I've been thinking about it and thinking of all the different places this affects. Of course, we probably all know the history of Wine Time and the residents above Wine Time and the conflict that took place there over a period of a year or so. But if you think of going up and down the village, Britannia Arms has residents above it. Cava Wine Bar has residents essentially next to it. Mr. Kebab has residents above it. Margaritaville has residents above it. I'm sure there are plenty I have forgotten. So what's different about this than controlling what's going on in the village for residents, let's say at Venetian Courts, is that it's the same owner of the building. The residents and this particular shop are renting from the same landlord, and that landlord can control if there's disturbance. He buys leases, and by the conditions he imposes either on the tenants, residents, or on the commercial, he can. Government doesn't have to regulate this for the landlord because he has control of both spaces. So I think it's a slippery slope, and it seems to me like we're singling out one business here, whereas there are lots of businesses in the village that have residents affected by their hours whose hours are not regulated like that.
I would agree with you, except that I think we look at businesses that require a conditional use permit. And a lot of the businesses in the village don't require a conditional use permit because the straight retail type businesses. And the reason you require a conditional use permit is because you feel this is a type of business that needs to not so much be regulated, but as Gail said, people need to know what they can expect is going to happen in this particular location. And when Gail brought up the hours, it was to, extend them because the applicant in his application had given hours that were more restrictive that they were going to operate in. And I think we're trying to come up with ones that are going to be a bit more realistic. I could go even further with the hours and, say from 6 in the morning till 10 at night, because I think clearly down in the village a lot of stuff goes on from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. But that's just...
I would hate to see us start regulating too much more than what we already have. I mean, if you want a cup of coffee at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to get it in the village. So sometimes that's disappointing. I think, obviously, I read his management plan and that's hours he proposed, and I don't have a problem with that. But I think allowing the flexibility to at least 7 o'clock is certainly appropriate. That's when other restaurants and parts of the business open in the rest of the village. So I'd hate to see us limiting business. I want to see them successful, and anything we can help to do that. I don't think the hours 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock certainly isn't going to propose a problem. Specifically with that building, the owner has some latitude to deal with their occupants or his tenants. So, yeah, I'd hate to see us limit that through, our use here through the use permit.
But what I hear you saying is that we shouldn't be putting hours on businesses down in the village.
But we have done that. I mean, we have definitely done it with restaurants, and I'd like to find. I know we did it with the market that was proposed and never got built.
What happened there was it got appealed to the city council and they withdrew their application. That's neither here nor there.
Well, certainly the restaurants on the Esplanade all have hours of operation.
Right, and the difference to me is that those hours are designed to protect the general population of people who are residing all over the place, not the people who are in the same building that can be controlled by the landlord. So, I mean, if you feel that these hours are necessary because of the general village, then I think that's one thing. I don't know if they are or not. I mean, the bakery doesn't seem like it to me. I can understand a nightclub.
Right.
No, I don't think that as a bakery they're going to be real successful staying open, really late all of the time. I think it'll help them be successful if they're open, early in the morning, because I'm one of those people who would love to get a cup of coffee in the village at, 6:30 in the morning. And I don't really see where it forms a problem establishing hours of operation as we give them a new conditional use permit, because once that's done, then it doesn't come back to us to change, should it change hands, as long as the use is the same. So I support the 8 to 9. I wouldn't have a problem making it earlier than 8. But then it's going to be up to the business owner and the owner of the building to manage any issues that might come up. But I don't have a problem with expanding the hours and having them put into the process.
About 7 to 9.
They can always come. They can always come back and if all has gone well and they've decided to expand their hours, there's not going to be a problem with that.
Okay, so I don't have to vote no on an application that I want to approve. I'm going to make a motion to approve this application with no restriction on hours.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Welch?
Yes.
Commissioner Westman?
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Yes.
Commissioner Newman?
Yes.
Chairperson Smith?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Welcome to Capitola. We like to fight about everything.
We did good, though. Okay, we're moving now to the public hearings, and I will explain the process, even though you just saw it happen. This is a hearing that's intended to provide an opportunity for the public to speak. The process is staff presentation, then we'll open it for public discussion or public speaking, and please speak to the commission and not amongst yourselves when speaking. Then we'll bring it back to the Planning Commission for comments, and questions. We'll close the public portion of the hearing, and the Planning Commission will deliberate and make their decision. So 408 Monterey Avenue, staff report, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you is a design permit and variance request to construct a new 2,151 square foot home at 408 Monterey. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing home and build a new 2-story home on the lot. The project is located in the R1 single-family zoning district. The proposed project is at 408 Monterey, just southwest of New Brighton Middle School. The property is separated from Monterey Avenue by a 10-foot landscaped easement area, which slopes upwards towards the property. The homes along this portion of Monterey, between Younger Avenue and Washburn Avenue, are accessed by a private 20-foot wide easement area along the eastern edge of the properties. So here you can see the proposed first story of the home. The 1,152 square foot first story area will contain a kitchen, dining room, living room, bedroom, 1.5 baths, and an attached 256 square foot single car garage. The 743 square foot second story will have a bedroom, bathroom, master bedroom with an attached master bathroom and walk-in closet. Here you can see the front elevation of the proposal. The home is a traditional bungalow-style home with large open windows, stucco siding on the first floor, and hardy board lap siding on the second. The roofs are low sloping and made with 40-year composition shingles. The front of the home is accessed through that before mentioned private alley to the east. The front facade has an arbor over the single-car garage supported by stone and wood columns, as well as a bow, which is similar to a bay window. The entrance to the home is along the southern property line and contains an entry arbor and a 6-foot metal gate. The applicant will be removing the small palm tree from the front yard and planting it in the backyard. Image on the left, and then the image on the right are 4 Joshua trees, 3 of which are going to be maintained. That dead one in the middle will be removed. The existing redwood and palm trees in the rear yard, as well as the oak tree in the rear easement area between the property and Monterey Avenue, will be maintained. The proposed front yard area will contain 2 uncovered parking spaces, which are shown in blue, as well as a semi-permeable shale stone walkway. A majority of the yard areas on this lot are made up of decking due to the slope of the property. The applicant is proposing 3 small landscaped areas shown in green in the northern, eastern, and southern corners. The landscaped areas total roughly 290 square feet, which is just about 7% of the 4,000 square foot property. The applicant is requesting a variance to exclude first floor decks from the floor area ratio calculation. The code dictates that first level decks above 30 inches in height are counted towards the max floor area in R1 zones. The proposal calls for 2 deck areas labeled upper and lower. The upper deck ranges from 36 inches to 51 inches above grade and is level with the first story of the building. The lower deck is set 2 feet below the upper deck and ranges from 30 inches to 48 inches above existing grade. The 2 decks make up approximately 580 square feet. Without this variance, the proposal would be 570 square feet above the allowed floor area for this property. According to Municipal Code 1766090, Planning Commission may grant a variance permit when it finds A, that special circumstances are found to deprive the subject property of privileges enjoyed by other properties, and B, that the grant of a variance would not constitute a grant of a special privilege. The majority of R1 parcels within the city are located on flat lots. However, this subject property is it slopes downward in the rear. As you can see somewhat in this picture, this is the best I could do. A deck can typically be built within 30 inches of grade and be level with the first story of a home on a flat lot, but since this lot is sloped in the rear, it causes the deck to reach up to 51 inches above grade at the highest point. The variance would allow the property owner to have 2 large deck areas in the rear yard with only 1 step or grade difference separating them. The variance was not approved. The applicant could still have a deck area in the backyard, but there would have to be several different areas because of that decrease in height with several different steps going down. If approved, staff finds the deck will not create negative impacts for the neighbors. At the architectural and site hearing, Frank Phantom, the architect representative, expressed concerns with the north side second-story windows of the proposal and causing privacy issues with the neighbors. This image shows the neighboring property at 410 Monterey Avenue. As you can see, the neighboring structure has large open windows and a second-story deck area on the south side, which is adjacent to 408. So this circled area in blue matches up roughly with this area on the 408 Monterey Avenue plans. I verified with Dennis that the only window that's going to overlap is the smaller bathroom window, and he said he would have no issue with making it opaque for additional privacy concerns. Staff recommends the Planning Commission review the application and approve project 15052 based on the findings and conditions. Thank you.
Questions for staff? I had one question. Relative to the lower part of the lot, how much fence is going to extend above the deck level?
I believe the deck is just the 6 foot with the 2 foot lattice above existing grade. That's what the code requires, so we wouldn't allow it to go anything above that.
So the deck's going to be at 48 inches above grade at that point, so you're going to have 2 feet of fence between people on the deck and Monterey Avenue?
I'm sorry, are you saying the edge of the deck comes within 2 feet of the property line?
No, I'm talking about the height of the deck. So if you're standing on Monterey Avenue, you've got a 6-foot fence plus 2 feet of lattice work, so it's 8 feet covered. And 48 inches of that is going to be the floor of the deck.
Yes, so
Okay.
the fence is not going to go up at the deck level, if that's what you're asking.
Right, no.
So, what you're asking?
No, if you're standing on the deck,
Yeah.
you're looking at Monterey, you've got, I'm looking at how much fence you've got protecting you from Monterey Avenue.
Got you. Okay,
And I'm-
so it would be the... So yeah, 8 feet minus 48 inches,
Be 4
roughly
feet.
6 feet.
So, there's the slope that goes up from Monterey Avenue to these lots. And it's my understanding that the edge of the pavement isn't the edge of the right-of-way there. There's another 10 feet. I can't remember exactly, but it seemed like that bank, that sort of wooded, wild bank that you see there, that their property line doesn't come out to the street, that there's a
Yeah, there's
area
that
of
10-foot
land
easement area.
in there, so their fence won't be on Monterey Avenue. Their fence will be set back
Yeah, it's
a bit from Monterey Avenue.
That clarifies.
Yeah, that's correct.
And it'll just depend on which grade that is,
Right.
There's not a way right now to know exactly what that grade would be, but I don't know if it makes any difference.
But because when you drive along there, when I was looking at it, there are other fences in other backyards where people have the 6-foot fence, and it seems to, not seem intrusive from Monterey Avenue because they're set back.
And I was trying to look at the aerial and stuff to see if there are any decks that take up that much of the backyard. Because I've seen circumstances where the fence gets awfully short if you're standing on the deck.
Right.
And I just wanted to make sure that it's a safe height for, people on the deck. If you've got kids running around, they're not going to...
They're going to have to put railing on the deck anyway.
Yeah, the deck would have the required railing.
Good point. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? This is the opportunity for the public to speak on this item. If the applicant is present.
The applicant isn't, but the homeowner, Mr. Lin, is here, if you guys have any questions.
Have any questions? Mr. Lin, did you want to speak at all? Okay. Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the commission. Who would like to start?
I'm normally not in favor of variances, but it seems like when you talk about having an unusual lot or circumstance, this is one that really does apply, because not only do you have the sloping lot, you have a lot which has no access off its Monterey address and no access, and all of its access is off the alley there. So this is one of the few cases I think I'm pretty comfortable with supporting the variance, so they could have the deck and create some usable outdoor space. So I really don't have any problems with the application.
Yeah, I also think decking right now is a really good water conservation tool, and we should encourage as many decks as we can.
I would agree.
Okay, I myself don't have any problem with this application. Deck is a good use for a sloped, yard like that.
Right.
And it's permeable, so it does help with, water conservation and the landscaping area being replaced by decking in the backyard like that. I have no problem with that at all. And we also had a public hearing just last week where I think the discussion and the desire going forward in the zoning code is to take a look at having decks count in the FAR, and I think that it's possible that that will change in the near future. So this kind of a variance, I have no issue with this. Do I have a motion?
Move approval of the application.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Congratulations. Good luck. The draft climate action plan is the next item on our agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I do have a relatively detailed presentation for you tonight. I'll try to move through it quickly, but if I'm going too fast, you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. So just for a little bit of an overview of the presentation, I'll go over briefly the background and regulatory setting behind the Climate Action Plan, describe briefly again why climate action plans in general and greenhouse gas emissions, and then the City of Capitola's draft Climate Action Plan, its format and content, our existing greenhouse gas emissions inventory, the future greenhouse gas emissions forecast, and then get into the proposed reduction targets that we're offering to meet our reduction goals, the measures that will implement those targets, and then the projected reductions that would be realized if those measures are implemented and successful. And then finally, I'll highlight a couple of the issues with the project and offer recommendations. So in terms of the regulatory setting, there are a number of state legislative and executive acts that have been passed over the past decade related to climate change. Most notably, Assembly Bill 32, the California Global Warming Solutions Act, was passed in 2006, and it requires California agencies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. Subsequently, Senate Bill 375 was passed. This is the Sustainable Community Strategy. This established a process to coordinate land use planning, regional transportation plans, and funding priorities to comply with AB 32. You may be familiar with AMBAG's Sustainable Community Strategy. The MTP plan that they adopted last year was responsive to SB 375. And then finally, back in 2005, then Governor Schwarzenegger issued an executive order S3-05, which set statewide targets to reduce greenhouse gas emission levels 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. Independent of state-initiated climate change actions, the City of Capitola has long been known for its sustainable views and values, and that carried through in the general plan, which was adopted with a guiding principle to embrace environmental sustainability as a foundation for Capitola's way of life and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, preparing for the effects of climate change, including flooding, coastal erosion, sea level rise. That was also carried through a number of goals and policies, and the general plan update environmental impact report also had a mitigation measure requiring us to prepare a climate action plan within 18 months of adoption. So a climate action plan is a long-range implementation plan, generally over at least a 20-year time frame, and its primary purpose is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Climate action plans have been or are in the process being used by over 400 California agencies to outline their strategies for how they're going to meet the state's reduction targets. Greenhouse gases, as most of you know, are vapors that trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere. It's widely accepted by climate scientists as contributing to human-induced climate change. The most common greenhouse gas types are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and hydrofluorocarbons. And when we're talking about greenhouse gases, they're measured in metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And what that means is that not all greenhouse gases are the same. Hydrofluorocarbons, for example, are hundreds of times multiply the greenhouse gas effect that, say, a carbon dioxide has. The primary sources of GHG emissions, particularly here in Capitola, are your transportation, mobile sources, automobile travel, air and sea, construction equipment, off-road recreation, energy consumption from both residential and non-residential use, heating, cooling that's based on coal, oil, natural gas, fossil fuel types, solid waste associated with transporting our garbage, the decay of the garbage that releases greenhouse gas emissions, and then generating the need for new raw materials to be created. And then finally, water and wastewater, typically from transporting our water and wastewater and then treating it. So the draft Climate Action Plan is broken down into 8 parts. There's an introduction and background. And then the main part of the document is really the existing baseline inventory, the forecast for 2020, 2035, and then outlining our reduction targets, reduction measures, and then how we're going to implement and monitor the work in the Climate Action Plan. And then there is a pretty thick appendix with this document that contains all the modeling data and a lot of the nuts and bolts for the numbers that you see that are in the plan if you're so interested to dig into it. So we have a 2010 baseline inventory. That's the existing greenhouse gas emissions that we have here in Capitola. This was based on a report that AMBAG prepared for Capitola in 2010 to outline our emissions inventory. That report concluded that we're currently emitting, in 2010, we are emitting a little over 88,000 metric tons of greenhouse gases annually. Of that, transportation is by far the biggest source at about 65%. Energy follows about 33%, and then all the other sources combined contribute less than 3% to that overall inventory. To give it a little more perspective on an average household, the average Capitola household footprint is approximately 41 metric tons of greenhouse gases per year. Most of that, again, it comes from car fuel emissions and energy consumption. So for forecasting where we're going in the future, we use both 2020 and 2035 target areas and a longer-term 2050 target horizon. The forecast scenarios are presented under 2 assumptions. The business as usual scenario assumes that there's no federal, state, or local GHG reduction actions. So it's as if there were no changes to existing laws curtailing emissions. It does account for future growth, but existing emission intensities. The other scenario that's presented is an adjusted business as usual. This differs from the business as usual in that it accounts for federal and state programs aimed at cutting emissions, but no local reduction measures. So as you can see in the table below, under a business as usual scenario, in 2020 we'd actually see an increase of 2% in emissions, 4% by 2035, whereas when you account for state and federal actions, we'd realize a 12% reduction in 2020 and a 2035 20% reduction. So when we set our reduction targets, we looked at what the state did. Last year, the California Air Resources Board updated its inventory for the state of California, concluded that statewide we would need to achieve a 4.9% reduction to comply with Assembly Bill 32. We're using that same standard, and we're on track to exceed that target without implementing any local measures. In 2035, this is an interim target based on the governor's executive order. This would require a 42.9% reduction in emissions by 2035. Currently, we're on track to substantially, but slightly fall short of meeting that target. 2050, there would be an 81% reduction in emissions. This is a long-term target, again, based on the executive order. The California Air Resources Board and most climate scientists have determined that this goal is currently infeasible without some kind of transformational technology changes. And we, like probably 99% of other California jurisdictions, are not projected to comply with this goal currently. So the proposed GHG reduction measures are really the backbone of the Climate Action Plan. If you read any part of the plan, I would suggest that that's where you read it. That's where the rubber meets the road and describes what Capitola is proposing to commit itself to. Currently, the draft Climate Action Plan is based primarily on voluntary incentive-based measures. But to show quantifiable reductions, we did include some regulatory measures as well. Again, just as the sources for greenhouse gas emissions, we have 4 primary categories for reduction: transportation, energy, water, wastewater, and solid waste. The table here you can see broken down by the various sectors, the forecast for the reductions in emissions. Transportation, although it's the largest source of emissions, it's also probably the most difficult to deal with at a local level. These are generally federal, state, regional issues, and a city the size of Capitola, it's really difficult to change transportation patterns and behaviors. Energy, there's a little more potential to increase our energy efficiency. There's always new technologies that are emerging, more financing programs, so we have a little more promise with that. Water, wastewater, solid waste, parks, open space, these are measures that we can achieve some savings, but not nearly to the level as we can with energy and transportation. Just to give you kind of a flavor of some of the reduction measures that are proposed in the Climate Action Plan. For transportation, there's a lot of measures that promote alternative transportation modes, things like cycling, walking, carpooling, bus, rail. Supporting and implementing the Monterey Bay Coast Rail Trail is one of the big ones. If that project is realized, it would provide a lot of greenhouse reductions for the city. Increasing the uptake of hybrid and electric vehicles through incentives, education, outreach kind of efforts, and then encouraging mixed-use development so that jobs and housing are located near each other to reduce long commutes and automobile emissions. In terms of energy, encouraging more solar, streamlining permitting. As you may recall, the city last year waived all permitting fees for solar installations. We'll continue to try to make that an easier process for our residents to add solar to their homes. We are considering adding requirements for new construction to pre-wire so that if somebody wants to put solar panels on their roof, it's ready to go. If they want to have an electric vehicle charging station in their garage, it's all wired and ready. We're looking at amending the green building program beyond Title 24. Overall, we'd be consistent with the Cal Green standards, but we're looking at for larger project types, homes that are over 3,000 square feet, subdivisions, large commercial developments, that we would require them to go to some level above current Cal Green standards. A lot of energy efficiency, weatherization, lighting, more efficient heating and cooling systems. There's a lot of regional programs that we can participate with to do that work for us. Promoting local green businesses, trying to get more businesses to go green. And then another big one is community choice aggregation. You're probably all familiar with that effort. Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties are looking at a tri-county community choice aggregation, which would provide a non-profit energy procurement process or system where you could buy energy from them rather than PG&E. The idea being that they would use more renewable energies in their mix than PG&E does and have competitive pricing. So that's being investigated, and if that were to be fulfilled, we could potentially meet all our Climate Action Plan reduction goals with just that measure in and of itself. Unfortunately, it's not something we control by ourselves, so it's a regional effort. In terms of water, wastewater, continuing to try to promote water conservation, increased efficiency, drought-tolerant landscaping, and water fixture retrofits. A lot of these standards we have today, and the water districts implement, so we would just look to continue a lot of those requirements. Encouraging greater water recycling, rainwater catchment, more gray water systems, rain barrels like we did this past year, and reducing impervious surfaces. In terms of waste, there is state legislation that all cities and counties in California reduce their solid waste production by 75% by 2020. That's something that we've been looking at and working with our regional partners in green waste. So it's a standard that we're going to have to meet independent of the Climate Action Plan, but there will be some greenhouse gas reductions realized through that effort. Reducing construction waste, more recycling, and then trying to increase the food waste and composting so that we divert that away from the landfills as well. And overriding all of these measures are going to be a lot of programs to incentivize and change people's behaviors, trying to get out to the community and our stakeholders, businesses, schools, and educate them and increase awareness is going to be a big part of the Climate Action Plan. So once those measures were modeled and we looked at reduction estimates, and this includes all federal, state, and local measures that are proposed in the Climate Action Plan, we're projecting an 18% GHG reduction by 2020. That'd be over 13% above our minimum target as set by the state. In 2035, as I mentioned before, we'd fall a little bit short but substantially comply. And in 2050, it doesn't look so good. A couple of things to keep in mind when you look at these numbers. By exceeding the 2020 target, it does give the city some flexibility for implementation. We're not necessarily required to implement each and every measure in the plan. We can decide what measures have the most bang for their buck, what fits into the city's priorities and values, and resource availability. And it's important, though, with that in mind, to make near-term progress so that these long-term goals are attainable. Whether they're amended or there's new technologies, we don't want to be too far behind when 2030 comes. So this bar chart shows the business as usual scenarios, the adjusted business as usual scenarios, and then the measures, or the scenario that includes the local measures shown in green. So as you can see under the business as usual, the GHG emissions would actually be increasing with state and federal reduction measures. They are going down substantially. And then once you implement the local measures, we're below that mark considerably more. There are a couple of issues to consider with the Climate Action Plan. There's this issue of whether or not we want to really have a voluntary incentive-based Climate Action Plan, or if we want to include more mandatory measures. When we discussed this issue at the General Plan Advisory Committee a couple of years ago, the consensus there was to focus on voluntary measures, incentives, education, outreach, and try not to burden homeowners and builders with increased requirements, standards, and costs. The Commission on the Environment, on the other hand, and some of our stakeholders we talked to during zoning interviews did prefer more mandatory standards to be more aggressive, things like point-of-sale energy retrofits, similar to the water district's requirement that you put in water-efficient faucets and toilets when you sell your house. Theoretically, a program could be applied to require energy upgrades before you sell a home. Some of the pros and cons to consider: mandatory measures would offer a greater GHG reduction potential, but they also do result in higher development and resale costs to the end users. Incentive-based programs, on the other hand, would shift some of those costs to the city. If we're going to be trying to encourage people to do work, we might be refunding permit fees or rebating those. So those would require some city funds that might otherwise be absorbed by homeowners. Mandatory measures, though, could require additional resources to administer, monitor, and enforce. Point-of-sale energy retrofits, I'm not exactly sure how that work. I know it's been done, but I'm certain that it would require a little more staff effort to implement those types of programs. There's also fiscal considerations, and this is something we'll probably be highlighting a little bit more with the City Council. The implementation of the Climate Action Plan will require city investment. There are measures that call for more capital improvements to prioritize our sidewalk and bicycle facilities, to provide greater energy efficiency and upgrades in our municipal buildings, funding incentive-based programs through fee reductions or rebates, and then education awareness is going to require a significant amount of staff time. As it's currently proposed, we believe we can implement the Climate Action Plan with existing staff levels, but there would be requests in our annual the capital improvement program to put funding into some of these programs. So next steps, if all goes well tonight, we'll present this to the City Council on May 28th and request that they authorize us to initiate public review. If we get that go-ahead in June, we'll do revisions to the Climate Action Plan based on any direction we get from the Commission and Council. There's some minor staff edits, and then there's also been some requests from the Commission on the Environment to add some additional implementation details in the proposed work plan and a summary of actions completed to date, and we intend to make those changes as well. So our schedule then would be a 30-day public review period beginning probably sometime in July. In August, once we collect our comments, we'd provide responses, revise the Climate Action Plan accordingly, and then September, October, we would initiate adoption hearings before your Commission and the City Council. So for recommendations, the Commission on the Environment did meet 3 times to review the Climate Action Plan. They recommended that the City Council authorize release for public review, but they did have the following comments. They would like to see more details of the implementation of each action item. This is something staff intends to provide with the public review draft. They would like us to refine the targets and timelines for implementation of each item. This is something that we're going to try to do without sacrificing flexibility. It's really difficult to forecast what's going to happen in 3 years, what city priorities are on a plate, what staffing levels are. So we don't want to nail our feet to the floor necessarily. Incorporating a plan of action to implement the reduction measures. We are going to provide more details on a kind of a work program and how we intend to carry out these actions. The Commission also wanted us to review and incorporate details from other cities like Berkeley, Santa Monica, and Palo Alto. I've done that. Their climate action plans are pretty general too. In fact, some are more general than ours. They give short, near-term, and long-term goals rather than years. I think we're pretty similar or even have greater detail than those jurisdictions. So generally, I don't know that we want to get overly detailed on a long-range plan. And then finally, incorporate policies and ordinances to ensure implementation of each action item. This is something where we're going to seek policy direction, whether or not we want to include more mandatory measures on end users, and if we want to commit ourselves to implementing each and every measure in the plan. I would advise against the latter. I think the mandatory measures really is a pure policy decision, though. Our recommendation, of course, is that you provide a recommendation to the City Council to authorize us to initiate public review. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item?
Thank you. My name is still Richard Lippy. I still live on Monterey Avenue. And just a couple of brief questions. There's a lot to try to absorb there. Would wood-burning fireplaces or appliances have any impact on greenhouse gases? And were they addressed?
They do. You know, again, we measure it in metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, so, you know, the amount of greenhouse gases a wood fireplace emits is not immeasurable, but it's very minor. But cumulatively, it does make a difference. There's not any goals or policies in the Climate Action Plan. However, there is one in our general plan that discourages the use of wood-burning fireplaces.
Okay. And the other thing I want to mention about greenhouse gases is being a volunteer with the police department and working at the events. Last September, I brought up the subject of reducing the unnecessary traffic, trying to get through it's through traffic that's trying to get through the village it's creating a lot of, you know, wasted gas, and also people trying to find parking spaces. So in February, I submitted my plan to reduce the incidence of through traffic at village events, and also how to how to get people parked sooner. And I just want to let you know that that's out there. The police department has that, and I think that that might be a small contribution.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the Commission. Comment?
Good job, staff. Yeah.
So I read the whole thing, though. I thought it was very well done. There was a lot of generic material in there, but you built on that. 2 comments I have. One is that almost all the strategies that are, this is called a Climate Action Plan, but almost every one of the strategies has environmental benefits other than, in case you happen to have reservations about the cause of climate change, you would still be in favor of this plan because there are other benefits, for example, reducing vehicle traffic. I mean, obviously, that other than greenhouse gas emissions, it creates all kinds of other benefits. So I think that's a plus. And the other comment I had is the first paragraph of the introduction on page 1-1 is a beautiful description of Capitola today. and I recommend that everyone read that at least 3 times.
Out loud now.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just have one minor comment. If they ever reprint this document, could they do it in a little larger font and a little darker color? I had to turn on all the lights in my bedroom to be able to actually read it. So I used a lot more energy. But there's
More
all this
trees around.
space around the page. I mean, there's a lot of white space on all these pages. It certainly could be a little larger font.
I think we can accommodate that. Might require a few more pages of paper.
I don't think so. I think you got plenty of room, top and bottom and side.
Should we hold on to these after the meeting? Is that, are we meeting again?
You may, the intention is that we'll make some revisions before it goes out on the streets, so you'll get another copy, but certainly feel free. I don't think there's going to be wholesale changes between now and then.
I think we all agree that we should have it passed along to the public. And do you need a vote for that?
I don't know if it needs a formal vote. If anyone objects, but otherwise, I think that's all
No,
I
it
need.
should go on to the city council and then out to the public, and it'll come back to us in the fall.
Yep.
Get some good inputs, and I did get a chance to read just that final chapter, and all the measures look reasonable. I think the one comment about putting in an implementation plan, my recommendation would just be to leave it flexible, because as we go through and we find the priorities and line the priorities up with what else is going on in the city, things are going to change, so you don't want to have to keep reissuing the schedule. Okay. That is the end of the public hearings section. Do we have a director's report?
I do have a brief report for you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The Monterey Avenue Skate Park, we have deemed that application complete. As you recall, the City Council did give them a 90-day deadline to submit a complete application. We reviewed all the materials. They did have some minor corrections that we needed, and they've made that submittal today, and everything looks good to go. So next steps are we're currently negotiating with a consultant to prepare an environmental impact report and a couple of environmental technical specialists for noise, traffic, and parking. I anticipate in having that wrapped up in the next week or two. After that, we'll start working on scheduling a public scoping meeting as required by CEQA, where we'll call in the public and try to solicit their input on potential environmental issues. Then we'll go to work on preparing the draft environmental impact report, and somewhere during that time we'll also have an ARC and Site meeting, another public meeting, an opportunity for the public to participate. We did update the information on the city website. If anyone's interested at home, we'll continue to try to keep that updated. It's under the community development website under current projects, and right on our homepage there's a link that will bring you there. Also, as Katie noted earlier, when Commissioner Welch appointed himself to the Traffic and Parking Commission, there is a meeting this week at 6:30, and one of the topics on the table will be talking about zoning changes to parking. We're going to ask the Commission for their input, whether there's anything in the ordinance that they would like changed, and then their input on the options that we have in the report. And then finally, we also did update the Community Development Department website for the zoning code update process. We put some information, tentative schedule. That schedule has changed based on the great progress we made the other night. Right now, we are leaving the 2 July meetings empty. If everything goes well, we'll be relieved. If not, we can always shift some of those issues down to those meetings. And also the June, I believe it's the 15th meeting, we're tentatively holding to have a public workshop to talk about non-conforming multifamily uses in R1 districts. And we'll be sending out notices to everybody within 300 feet that's in an R1 zone that lives near those areas. Because we want to hear what those people's views are with those uses, if they're really a problem or if they fit in well. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Just one question on the schedule and the topics for the meeting. Is that updated on the website now?
It is. In fact, I posted something before we talked, and we made a couple of adjustments, so right now it's up to date. And then we'll continue to update it if, say, our meeting in a couple of weeks goes long, we don't get to the last issues, we'll adjust it as we go.
If it's handy and not too big an issue, would you mind emailing a copy of the current schedule and the list of
Absolutely.
topics to the commissioners so we've got it handy? Thank you.
And a question having to do with the skateboard park meetings. Will future maintenance costs be part of what you're doing studies on right now?
It won't be part of the environmental impact analysis, but it's something that we're going to consider as we move through it. The Public Works Director, I'm sure, is going to put that into consideration, and I'm sure it'll be a topic that we need to address.
Thank you. Commissioner comments?
I have one. Do we have an alternate for the traffic? And the reason I bring that up is I will be out of town next Wednesday. I will not be able to attend, so if we do have an alternate, maybe somebody else wants to attend. Otherwise, I'll have to catch up notes
Be
on
out of
some.
town next Wednesday, too.
Nobody's going to be here next Wednesday.
I think it's going to be a pretty light meeting because a lot of even the other traffic and parking commissioners are going to be out of town next
Oh,
week.
okay.
The Public Works Director, when he let me know about the meeting next week, he specified that if our Planning Commissioner could not make it next week, that is okay, where we're going to be bringing their feedback to this commission in a few weeks.
Well, thank Mr. Jesper for me.
Okay, any other communications? If not, then we will adjourn the meeting to our next meeting on, I believe it's Thursday.
Monday the 18th. Special meeting.
Monday, May 18th, the special meeting. Thank you.